So we are working on creating a life with God, and we are on the fourth chapter for apophatic prayer, be still and know. And before we dive into that today, I just wanted to take a moment to hear how you might have been using some of these prayer practices for yourself lately and how that's going. So does anyone feel like sharing today?
I've been doing the Jesus prayer a lot. It especially seems to help me calm down and get to sleep at night.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Anne, are you at the beach up north right now?
I am. I don't want to make you all feel bad, but I'm looking out at the beautiful ocean right now. On the fifth floor ocean front, and it's just delightful. Very hot, but beautiful. No red tide on the ocean side.
Wonderful. Good for you.
Yeah, it's just lovely. It really is very peaceful. I sat out this morning very early and watched people walking the beach, and it was very quiet. They start the music and all the activities very early to get people prepped up. So I took my hearing aids out and it was quiet, and I looked at the beach and the ocean, and just it was very, very, very peaceful.
Lovely. I'm glad.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Prayer practices? How have they been going for you?
I can't tell. Okay, I guess I can speak now. I had so much trouble the last time we got together. It was so frustrating because my picture wouldn't come up and I didn't know what to do. So I did talk to Marissa, and she helped me a lot by just explaining things that I probably already knew but forgot. And anyway, as far as prayer practices, I like the one where you're really reading the Bible. I forget the name of the practice, but and you pick a certain word and you meditate on that. That seems to me the one that it's probably the easiest for everyone, because I think it's easier, because the other ones I'm just having trouble with. I really didn't understand this week's lesson. I mean, I understood it, but I really couldn't do it. I didn't understand how I was supposed to do it. And
Sure.
I know they say, oh, but no matter what you do, it's okay. And I get that, but I guess I still want to feel like I've either done something or found something, or
Sure.
anyway. But I do have to tell you, I'm feeling very sad, because I just found out a couple of days ago that I have a friend with brain cancer,
Oh, gracious.
Oh
and
gosh.
a Presbyterian minister in Pittsburgh, and she's been a good friend and supportive, and I feel very sad about it. So
Sure.
I did put her on the prayer list. Her name is Sarah Heppenstall, but
Sarah.
I mean, she adopted children from Russia, and she's right now raising some of those grandchildren, and I'm just devastated. I really am.
Sure. Sure. We'll keep Sarah in our prayers and you.
Thank you.
And I'm glad it's Lectio Divina, sacred reading. And I'm glad that one seems to connect with you. That's great. Who else?
I think possibly I've been some of the silent prayer. Actually, when I'm being silent, it's just silence. I don't really feel anything at that time. But then later on, when I start working, just doing some kind of a routine task like washing dishes or something, then something will come to me that I've been worrying about or thinking about, and I feel like I'm getting a response, but it's delayed. It's not right there where I'm sitting and being quiet and listening. So it just, it takes a little while, and I do feel like I'm getting some answers.
Good.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Merle, for sharing. You do bring up a good point. Everybody's experience is different. And some people do feel something in the moment with silent prayer. And some people just have a different sense of, because of silent prayer, moving into the rest of their day, right? And
Yeah.
both experiences are valid, are good, but it is so different for every person. So
Right.
thank you for sharing your perspective with that.
Yeah.
Marisa?
Mine's a little bit of a mixture of Merle's two steps. Back when I was isolating and having to stay at home, I would pull weeds. And I found out that to really pull a weed correctly, you really need to be intent on what you're doing, where you reach down and pull up, because you're not wanting to break it off, you're wanting to pull it up by the roots. And so just by me doing that and being very intent on what I'm doing, my brain is very silent. And I've had more than one nugget dropped into my head as I was pulling the weeds, and then shortly thereafter as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think we had talked about too at one point, just the idea that sometimes you need to be able to do something physical in order to be able to be still and be, like still in your mind and be quiet and silence. And so kind of what you're, the concentrating of the routine. That's a good point. Yeah. I found myself still doing the Jesus prayer a lot while we were away. And then I managed to find a labyrinth on vacation. So there's one on Siesta Key Island, and I had no idea. It's been there for 20 years. And it's an Episcopal church. I was Googling to see what churches were around and where we might, sneak off to on a Sunday morning if we were feeling like it. And I found the labyrinth. And so it was really neat. I was able to go walk that one day in their courtyard, and that was really good prayer time to be out in the labyrinth. So, well, let's talk about apophatic prayer. This is probably the most unusual and probably the most difficult one out of all of the ones in the book. So just hear that. It is so completely different than anything else, because it moves so far beyond what we're used to, with beyond images and words and things. So if you were able to read the chapter before we got started, what stood out to you, or what questions did you have when you were looking at this one?
Well, I found a similarity. I never did do a lot of study or whatever about Zen, but I know some of the people had been thinking of, that I knew, did try to do some Zen meditation and stuff like that. And I was wondering about the similarity, because that is something about emptiness, or I don't, well, like I say, I didn't really follow that, and I didn't have that much interest in it because I didn't think it really applied to me. But at the same time, I'm aware of it, and it sounds more like closer to this. I mean, the sort of the meditation and the feeling of emptiness, which is what they emphasize, I believe.
Mhm. Well, Zen meditation is a little bit, meditation in general in the Buddhist tradition is a little bit different um, than kind of what we're getting into here. There are some
Right.
similarities, but there are some differences. So, yeah, the book that they mentioned in this, The Cloud of Unknowing, again, that was another one I had to read for class earlier this year. It really is about just sort of um, not emptying yourself to nothing, but it's this idea of coming to the end of yourself where you realize um, your limitations and sort of where God comes in and meets you in that. So it's a sort of a, it's sort of an emptying of yourself in the sense that it's um, you're not striving to do it all on your own, but you're realizing that you can't, and so and God can, and so you're trying to sort of meet him in that space. What else stood out for you in the chapter?
One of the sentences that he wrote is on page 69. He said, when we enter into the world of no images, our mind attempts to fill the space with something. And that's what I struggle with all the time, is just, when I think of nothing, then I feel like, oh, I ought to be thinking about something. So it's a very, very, very difficult concept to shut your mind down and focus for me.
Right.
I'm always trying to think about, what do I have to organize? What do I have to get done? What needs to get done here, there? It's very difficult for me to shut that down.
Yeah. I think some of us have been trained in our lives to feel like doing nothing is laziness. Doing nothing is bad,
Yes.
and that we have to be doing multiple things at one time in order to be productive. And you certainly had a career, Anne, where
Yes.
that was necessary, right? Being
Yes,
able to
exactly.
multitask and do all of those things because you had a school district depending on you. And so, um,
And 4 boys and,
yeah, yeah,
and whatever. Like everybody else, we had busy lives.
right, right. And so you just keep moving with that. And for people who are so used to filling up all the time and all of the space, being still, being silent, can be difficult and takes a lot of practice, right?
It
Because it
does.
is going
Mhm.
against everything that you have been ingrained with for decades.
That's
And
my
as
basic gestalt,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yes, multitask and always think about what needs to be done. What do I have to plan? What do I have to organize? So it's
right.
very, very, this whole concept is very difficult for me. When I accomplish it for maybe 5 minutes or so,
Hmm.
I feel very good and very peaceful. But I haven't gotten beyond 5 minutes, I can tell you that.
That's okay. If you don't get beyond 5 minutes, but you learn it and it is working for you,
Mhm.
and so maybe to lengthen the time, you do 5 minutes once in the morning and 5 minutes once in the evening. Hey, there you
And
go.
sometimes it's a minute here and a minute later and a minute later.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
sometimes that's all I can do.
No, but the
Yeah.
beautiful thing is that you keep doing it. You keep trying, right? And you're finding ways to do that. I like what he said there on 69. Um, we don't wait for God. We zoom off on our own, trying to be the master of ourself and the world. So, in silent contemplative prayer, rather than wait for God's grace to give us the gift of God's presence, we fill the empty space with our own thoughts, our own feelings, our ideas, and projects. And if you back up to 67, right in the middle of the page, if you have a book, it says, when we get into this cloud of unknowing, we are no longer in control. All our understanding about God is suddenly of no use to us. Our understanding about anything of the world is suddenly like sinking sand. And so it is this, that's also another struggle, right? Maybe you've not been ingrained to multitask, but maybe you've been ingrained to find ways to control your environment, and to always be in control because it's safety and security, right? And to have to sort of let some of that go in order to meet God in this unknowing space is can be very scary at the beginning. You know, and so it is, I do like what he says on 68, that, you know, books about apophatic prayer will tell you all about its wonderful virtues, but they will not tell you about other things like how your brain won't shut off, right? The poor guy that who went on a prayer retreat and thought he was going to go crazy and then fell down the stairs and it's like he got, you know, I'm going to end up dead at a meditation retreat because I can't cope with how my mind is just racing. You know, so just acknowledging that, all of those things, that this is something that if you feel drawn to it and feel any kind of connection with it, you're still going to have to practice it, right? It's still going to take time to get used to it. And then at the bottom below what you read, Anne, at 69, it says, one of the most prominent thoughts occurring to good Christians who unfortunately tend to be judgmental and self-critical is that we are doing something wrong, right? When we don't immediately feel anything as we're doing it, like this more intense connection to God, and we have all these thoughts drifting through our mind, we're like, oh gosh, what's wrong with us? Why can't we do this? I don't understand. And so they're talking about how at retreats, suddenly the leaders become worthless, right? Oh, it's all your fault that we don't know how to do this. We can't do this. You got to shove that off on somebody else. So so apophatic prayer is really about just trying to, like we said, sort of clear your mind, and just sort of enter into this space with God. Marisa, do you have any experience with this? I know you've got experience with a lot of the different ones.
Well, I think so. And
Okay.
it was during the, I was doing my reading, my required reading to take my training course. And so and bless you. So I was reading the part about meditation and Zen and all of that. So I'm out in my hammock chair, and I know I've talked to some Christians who say, I cannot let myself empty my mind because that will allow the evil one a step in. I don't really agree with that, but but I feel secure enough in my faith that I was willing to try to completely empty. And for a split second, until I thought, oh, I did it. I was there. Too much ego was still there. But now when I do go into my quiet time, I do not try to go that deep because I am using all of my energy and my time. Now, if I'm by myself, I could stay out there 20 hours, I guess, and everything would be fine. But in a controlled setting, I don't have enough time to work myself down to that area. So I just try to quiet as much as I can with a breath prayer,
Mhm.
and then just try to continue to quiet
Mhm.
and see what little nuggets God drops in. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a question
Sure.
about, now, let me ask you, when a person sleeps, even then, they don't always clear their mind because they have dreams.
Right.
And I know my husband is always saying, well, I don't know whether I can get any rest because I'm going to have so many dreams. And he says, I wish there was just a clock in my dreams and that would show me what time it was so I would know it was time to get up instead of having to have a kick out dream, is what he calls it. But, you can't even to go to sleep completely clear your mind.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's not an easy practice. Um,
Right.
but if you're able to do it, um, you can come to this very peaceful place, where you can really sort of feel um, held, surrounded by God. And it's like Marisa said, sometimes it doesn't last long.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's only a few moments before
Yeah.
the other things begin to try and kick back in.
Right.
But it is it is something, um, I think, worth trying for. Um, but it may not be something that you think, oh yes, I need to incorporate this into my life a couple of times a week, right? Um, there are some prayer practices that I find myself drawn to in certain seasons. Um, or when I've been doing one for a long time and suddenly it feels a little stagnant and I feel like, okay, let's try something different and kind of mix this up a little bit. Maybe no, it's not God, maybe it's me, right? So let's try something a little different here to focus my brain and my heart and everything with him. So apophatic prayer is this trying to just empty yourself, not picture anything, not, sometimes when you close your eyes and you're trying to relax and be quiet and still, like you go to your happy place, right? The beach or whatever, and you visualize. It's not about visualizing. It's just about trying to be still and be quiet and empty yourself. And so they do say that you should pick a word, something that's meaningful to you, so that when you notice that you're drifting, you can say the word and sort of come back to what you're trying to do. This is different than the Jesus prayer, because in the Jesus prayer, you're saying, Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, over and over and over again, right? And that's your focus, is those words. Here, you're just trying to focus on like this space between you and God. And you use that word to help bring you back to attention when you drift, not if you drift, right? Acknowledging that it's going to be when you drift.
Right.
um
Right.
and not
Because you're
another
going
if.
to drift.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um yeah, how do you all feel about doing that today? You ready to give it a whirl?
Mhm.
we try for 5 minutes. I know the book talks about 20 and longer. And I know that that might be a stretch, especially for us on Zoom and everything. But if we do 5 minutes, I'm gonna use my bell, my singing bowl, and I'll chime as we start. And then when we're done with the 5 minutes, I'm gonna start by saying the Lord's Prayer, and you can join me. Okay? Does that sound good?
Yep.
All right. I'm gonna pray just a little sort of prayer over us as we begin. And then you can go ahead and shut your camera off now if you want, so that we can just sort of focus on what we're doing, where we are. Okay. Gracious God, we offer you this space and time and ourselves, and ask that as we come to the end of ourselves and empty ourselves, that you would meet us in this place. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. All right. There are your beautiful faces again. So I actually let you go 6 minutes. So how was it?
Oh, whoops. Am I muted or not?
Oh, I
Okay.
can hear you.
Um, for me, it was difficult because I made a mistake and had the cleaning people who had to change the time. They're here today. My husband has the Alexa playing something that has a very strong drum beat. And I also remembered that the word that I had chosen was love. And for me, it's such a loaded word that perhaps I need to pick a word that has less meaning. And when the cleaning ladies turn on the vacuum, I'm going to have to leave because I won't be able to hear you. And we're going away next week. My husband is celebrating his 80th birthday, and the kids are all coming, and I'm very excited about it. And hopefully the hurricane is not going to be a hurricane and just bring us rain, but whatever. So anyway, but sorry, I can't give you a real positive report. But
No.
it is what it is.
We'll miss you
I
next
do
week.
accept that.
But it is one of those things where you have to be careful of your environment. And this is not always the best environment, right, for us to do these. Although I like being able to try and practice them with you.
Mhm.
Zoom isn't always great, and your house isn't always the best at 10:30 on a Thursday morning. So
That's my fault.
when I hit stop video and mute for me, the people across the street were mowing their lawn, right? So
Yeah.
I just had that sort of in the background the whole time. So yeah.
Mhm.
But that's what we're here for to share the real nitty-gritty of how this works or doesn't work. And I appreciate your insight, Pam, that um, a word with a lot of meaning and attachment may actually be a hindrance. And so maybe a random word, right, might work better. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you. Anybody else?
One of the things that has amazed me as I've gotten older is my hearing loss has gotten much more profound, but my other senses have grown so much stronger. My sense of smell is the sharpest that it has been in my entire life. And I'll say to Jim, do you smell that? Do you smell that? Somebody's doing laundry. I can smell the gain, or whatever. So sometimes that is overwhelming sometimes, or my sense of sight and touch are just stronger as my hearing loss has become more profound. So it's interesting how things change as you get older and you learn to develop other ways and other practices to do some of the same things that you did before.
Sure. Sure. Thank you, Anne.
Mhm.
Marla Marisa?
Well, I had been thinking about this practice and trying to decide on a word. And the word that I chose, actually, when I was thinking about it, and was word, because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And I had thought about that, and that was the one I was going to use. But then when this started, the word breath came into my mind. So I used that. Although then I just started thinking of the hymn, Breathe on Me, Breath of God. And instead of just concentrating on that and letting it fall away. But anyway, that was interesting because I had sort of picked out a word in advance, and then this other word came in.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm glad that you responded to the nudge to use a different word.
right.
And my guess is that had we given you more time today to be able to practice this, that once you sort of let Breathe on Me, Breath of God play out through your mind, that you would have been able to go deeper, right? Don't fight those things, right? But try and come back to your word, and your word was breathe. So if you just sort of let those words reign over you from the song and acknowledge them, and then kind of keep going with breathe, I think you might have been able to go deeper. So it might be interesting for you to try and set your timer sometime this week for 10 minutes,
Okay.
15 minutes, and try that again and see what might pop up for you. So thank you.
I, like Pam, by reading the chapter, I had already pre-picked. And since I do concern myself in every part of my life with the breath so much, I actually had it 2 words, but breathe in peace, breathe out unity. These are 2 things that I really, really want in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And those words are too loaded for me to use. So then I started concentrating on just my breath, and not because another word wasn't coming to me. And again, it's a good time to practice, but it's very hard for me to relax in the Zoom setting, even when I'm not in charge, because I feel like, okay, I have to meditate on demand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ugh. And that doesn't work real well. But again, you just practice. And Debbie, I don't think I'm going to be stepping on any toes when I say this. I think that my Christian life has boosted my yoga life as much as my yoga life has boosted my Christian life. And by me having the poses, which is not the most important part of yoga, by the way, but by me having those poses where I am intent on just feeling my feet on the ground, or whatever part of me is on the ground, you eventually, and it is a learning process, you eventually concentrate on just that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And the meditation is a lot like that. It's not something that you can try once a week and you're going to have it nailed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So last week, I had to meet with my summer class for a wrap-up Zoom with our professor while we were away one night. And all of us shared that same feeling about the assignment we were given over the summer to do silence 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week. And that we could never quite relax into it because we felt like we have to be aware, because we have to write this down, we have to log it, we have to record our reflections about it, like, and so that it was it was different than if we had just woken up that morning and decided, oh, I really want to spend some quiet time today, and do that without layering expectation upon it. um, and so I can hear that even though it's neat to try and be able to practice together, it also means sometimes you can't really settle into it because there's this expectation of, I have to do this right now, this way. um so yeah, and I don't think there should be any separation between yoga life and Christian life, because while the practice of yoga as we know it today developed in a different religious background, there are, when you study the Christian mystics and the ancient desert mothers and fathers, prayer poses that they came up with, right? So two things in two very different places, right? As they were seeking God and seeking connection with God. So I was sort of raised that to be very suspicious of yoga and of Zen meditation and all of those things as a child. And I have found them to be very helpful, and that they have helped me um, in my life, in my faith. They certainly help with my anxiety, and so those have been beneficial for me. Thank you for sharing that.
Right. You're welcome.
All right, how are we feeling? Apophatic prayer. You tried it. It's out of the way. I guarantee you the next one's going to be easier than this. So, the examine is kind of a reflection on your day. And so it's more of a thinking kind of exercise as you are praying. So I'm excited for us to try that one together next week. Um, and does anybody, I know we've got Pam with praying for Sarah. Does anybody have any other prayer requests to lift up today?
Yeah, Charlie Snyder and Barb, when they've just been on my mind since we were there Sunday. I mean, so difficult for them, but they are, they're strong, but just really hard.
Yeah, I checked in with Barb yesterday
Mhm.
again, and they were getting ready to watch. She'd had all of Charlie's old performances from his military days taken from VHS and put on DVD, so they were getting ready to watch a bunch of them. So yeah, we'll be praying for Charlie and Barb. Anybody else?
Well, Jane has gone out to Denver for her husband's niece's wedding.
Oh, okay.
So I pray for the wedding, and I also pray for Jane and Brooks to have a safe trip back.
Yeah, with all the traveling right now, yeah, that's a
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Jane and everyone else who's teaching on campus
Right.
and working
Absolutely.
virtually with schools. We got word
Right.
this morning that there's been an outbreak of COVID at the village's charter school, at the high
gracious.
school, and so one of our youth group members tested positive this morning for that. So we want to be in prayer for them. Marisa?
Specifically, I have 3 grandchildren who are too young to get the vaccine. But more important, and I've even quit praying for God to keep those 3 children safe. I just pray for all the children right now. This seems, this thing is evil. So
It's a very
Awesome.
difficult, all the controversy and everything. It's just so hard. And,
It
for
is.
us that
I know.
believe in the vaccine, we don't understand the philosophy or those that are not getting vaccinated. It's very hard.
Yeah.
I
Well,
know.
my grandchildren are not old enough.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. If
Yeah.
they're younger than 12, I think you can
Mhm.
have it if you're 12 or over.
Yeah,
Right.
our
My
Davis-
my
our
oldest
Davis
is not
only
12
11.
yet.
Yeah, and so that's a thing. We sent him back to school, and we're
I
right
know.
hard. So he
Yeah.
we found out last night in talking to him that he's not been eating lunch because he's afraid to take his mask off.
Mhm.
Oh,
And so we are probably going to be sending lunch so that he
Mhm.
can sit and eat at the table while everybody else is in the lunch line. So,
Mhm.
but yeah,
mm.
he was rather crabby last night, and we were like, "What's going on?" And then we discovered he hadn't been eating lunch, and we're like, "Oh, now it makes sense why he's crabby."
Baby.
You're hungry.
Oh.
Yeah. So, all right, well, let's pray together. Gracious and merciful God, we come before you this day with just so many concerns upon our hearts for people we know and love who are in need of you. We think of Pam's former pastor, Sarah, as she is battling brain cancer and ask that you would be with her. We think of Charlie Snyder on hospice care with his cancer, that you would just surround him and Barb with your presence. We think of Jane and Brooks as they're traveling and for the wedding this weekend. And we lift up all of the folks on school faculties and teachers, those doing that in person and virtually this year, like Jane, and just ask that you would help help them have a sense of your presence, and that you would keep them safe. And we pray for our children, those who are too young to receive the vaccine, and those who may have already received it but are in school with children from all over in all different places and situations. And we pray for a safe and a well year for them as well. We turn all of this over to you in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Have a good week, everybody.
Debbie and Ann, 1 second. Since you both are in communication